Good evening. My name is Jennifer Schlitt, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of the Ann Arbor area. I welcome you to tonight's forum featuring candidates for Ann Arbor City Council Ward 4, Jack Eden and Diane Gianola. The candidates will be on the ballot in the general election on Tuesday, November 7th. We are broadcasting from the studios of CTN in Ann Arbor. The League of Women Voters is pleased to sponsor these forums. The League is a nonpartisan, civic, and political organization that encourages informed and active participation of all citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and seeks to strengthen and broaden knowledge about our form of government and democracy. The League does not support candidates or parties. We do take stands, however, on issues that we have studied. One of the League's important goals is to assist voters in making informed choices at the polls, and thus we bring you tonight's program. Volunteers from the League of Women Voters are managing tonight's forum. Our moderator this evening is Dharma Ackman. Dharma will explain the format from here.
Thank you. So it's my pleasure to introduce the candidates for City Council representing the 4th Ward, Mr. Jack Eaton and Ms. Diane Gianola. The format for tonight is as follows. Each candidate will give an opening statement of up to 1 minute. Each candidate will have a closing statement of up to 2 minutes. And then in between, I will ask questions which came from the Ann Arbor community. We received 63 questions for this forum. We would really like to thank the community, the Civ City Initiative, students from Ann Arbor Pioneer High School, and members of the League for submitting questions. While we try to include as many as possible, our time with the candidates is limited. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to a question. We have timers who will hold up their paddles to let you know when you have 15 seconds remaining, and then they will let you know when you run out by indicating with a stop sign. Please stop when indicated so that we have time for both of you to give an opportunity in tonight's time. The order of speaking was determined by a drawing before we began. Opening first will be Ms. Gianola, followed by Mr. Eaton, and then for the closing statement, Mr. Eaton will go first. So we're ready for your opening statement, Ms. Gianola.
Okay, thank you. First, I would like to say thank you to the League for hosting us tonight and to Mr. Eaton for participating. I've lived in Ann Arbor for about 20 years and live in the Georgetown neighborhood. I currently work at the University of Michigan as a program manager, but have previously done medical research as a molecular biologist for the past 25 years. I have previously served on the City Planning Commission for 5 years and Historic District Commission for 3 years. My reason for running is simply that I want to be a more effective and informative voice for the 4th Ward. I believe that there is more to being a council member than just voting or pushing your own personal initiatives. There is a customer service aspect to the position that I think is not appreciated by some who currently serve on the council. I want to help you, the residents, navigate the city bureaucracy in order to get things done. I want to not only inform you about issues, but want to help you understand what things mean, what is doable, and what the ramifications might be for any given issue. If you would like to have a fresh, pragmatic voice on council, then please vote for me on November 7th. Thank you.
Mr. Eaton.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I want to thank my opponent for appearing and for running. I think this is healthy for democracy. And I want to thank everybody who's watching. I'm Jack Eaton. I've had the privilege to represent the 4th Ward on City Council since 2013. When I first ran for council, I promised to focus on improving our basic services and maintaining our essential infrastructure. I promised to represent the common sense point of view of Ward 4 residents. I've kept those promises. During my 2 terms in office, the city has made great strides toward catching up on our long neglected roads and other infrastructure. I have co-sponsored more than 40 resolutions, most of which were approved with a majority support of my colleagues. I believe that democracy works best with a variety of points of view. I'm not always in the majority, but I have had a real impact on the discussions of issues at council. I hope that you'll support me on November 7th.
Okay, and now to the first question. The first question goes to you, Ms. Gianola. The city has completed both the South State Street Corridor Transportation Study and a South State Street Corridor Plan. What are your priorities for implementing those recommendations?
I'm very much for both of those plans. I was extremely disappointed when the Allen Creek Greenway Trail Plan when the study committee came out, because they did not include those plans in the study committee. I went through Jack Eaton. I actually contacted Jack and council to try to get the Allen Creek Greenway Master Plan Committee to consider those plans so that the trail could continue south. But it was very disappointing that the council said no. So I would really like to have those plans implemented. And in there was a north-south trail that had the Ellen Creek Greenway Trail continuing down to the south part. So I would definitely push for those two plans to be implemented along with the Ellen Creek Greenway Trail.
Same question to you, Mr. Eaton.
Well, thank you. And I want to appreciate Ms. Gianola's mention of our working together to extend the greenway along this portion of State Street. I sponsored and council passed a resolution that will create a second phase of the greenway planning that will include this corridor in the greenway master plan. I'm a little more skeptical about our corridor planning and the State Street plan in general, because much of this will rely on transit-oriented development schemes and TIF schemes, which will skim tax money from new developments along this area to finance more development. Our community doesn't need to subsidize development. We really have a hot economy. We have a lot of people who want to open businesses and build new developments in our city. I don't think that we need to subsidize those sorts of plans. And so to the extent that the State Street Corridor Plan or the master plan include TIF schemes to divert public monies, I would oppose that portion of it.
Okay, the next question goes to you first, Mr. Eaton. Some argue that privatizing and outsourcing municipal and public school services is fiscally responsible as it saves taxpayer money. Others believe that outsourcing/privatization is more expensive for communities in the long run. Do you support or oppose privatization and/or outsourcing? Please explain.
So the City Council doesn't have a lot to say about the manner in which the school district chooses to run its businesses. But just philosophically, I'm against outsourcing and privatization. I believe that this is another means of transferring public money into private hands. And I have yet to see an example of privatization that's actually saved money or dramatically increased performance. So I typically oppose those kinds of schemes.
Okay. Same question to you, Ms. Gianola.
It's almost the same answer, because City Council does not run the school district. And I think going door to door, I found out that most people think somehow the city has oversight over the school board, and they do not. I've never been a proponent of privatizing any aspect of government. I think it actually costs more in the long run. It might be less of a headache and take away some inefficiencies, but I actually think it costs more. So I would not be in favor of privatizing any part of the government.
Okay, the next question goes to you first, Ms. Gianola. Do you believe that approving the Treeline plan should obligate the city to take on debt in order to construct part of it?
So the Treeline Trail?
Yes.
So in theory, I'm in favor of the Treeline Trail plan that's there. I think it's a little exorbitant. I think the cost is excessive, but that's because I think they put too many bridges in it and they went the gold standard. But I honestly would not vote to fund any part of the trail until the southern part has the master plan study started. Until they actually include the southern part of the city in this north-south trail, I would not be for funding any part of the trail. I think it was actually very insulting to the southern part of the city for the council to just completely ignore the issue when I brought it up through Jack Eaton on council. When the Master Plan Committee was meeting, right very on in the beginning, at the first public meeting, I told them when I was on Planning Commission that we always talked about a north-south trail, and I pointed out all the plans to them, and they refused to back up one step in order to get it right and do the entire trail for the city. So it's 1/3 of the city lives below Stadium Boulevard, and I really think that should be included in the plan before we go forward with funding any part of it.
Mr. Eaton, same
Thank
question to you.
I hesitate to incur debt for city projects. I believe that we need to be fiscally responsible. I am hesitant in supporting the Treeline Urban Trail because I think that we're losing our vision. the original Greenway vision and plan was much more park-like, and the more we talk about it, the more it becomes just a strip of asphalt through town, and the less visionary and the less robust it is. At the same time, the price tag has exploded because, as my opponent noted, we're including all of these massive projects, bridges over streets, and it's wildly overpriced at this point in its planning. And so I'm kind of disappointed in the direction that it's being taken. And I would like to see us to return to the idea of trying to make this park-like throughout the whole city rather than just an urban path. And so I think we need to revisit this and be more careful about it. But most certainly the $55 million price tag that has been mentioned is just outlandish, and I would not support going into debt for that.
Okay, the next question goes to you, Mr. Eaton. The city administration recently floated the idea of creating a new economic advisory commission. Should the city move ahead with that? And if so, what should its role be?
Well, I don't have any reason to oppose setting up such a commission, but we're really starting to duplicate efforts. We have a local chamber of commerce, which we should really encourage to be robust. We have our local economic development company, Spark, that performs a lot of these very same functions, and now we're setting up a whole new commission or committee to do the very same work that other organizations are already working on. On the other hand, I really think that it's important to have a strategic plan, that we can set goals and have measurable outcomes so that we can really determine whether our efforts towards economic development are being achieved. And so I'll support the formation of that committee.
Ms. Gianola, same question to you.
Economic development is extremely important for a city. This committee really needs to be more for transparency reasons and for marketing to the public about why it's important. I don't think the public understands the role of Spark or the role of what any economic development committee would do at the city. It is important so that the businesses and bringing in jobs to the city is considered the normal way of doing business in the city. We're not a bedroom community. We are a place that we want to live, work, and play here. And without economic development, we become a bedroom community. We won't have the jobs or the companies wanting to relocate here. That is extremely important for our way of life here. We like to live, play, and work in the same area. We don't like to commute to Detroit. We really want it all here. So if we're going to actually accomplish this, or keep it going, I should say, because we actually have that here right now, we really need an economic development committee to understand that and present that and market it to the public, and to bring in the businesses that create the jobs.
Okay, the next question starts with you. Is the problem of affordable housing in Ann Arbor causing neighborhoods to become less racially and socioeconomically diverse? How will the city prevent neighborhoods from becoming increasingly segregated?
There's really little the city can actually do. Our problem here is not gentrification, which everybody keeps using that word incorrectly. It's really affordability for everyone. It's just not people, it's not segregation, it's that everybody living here, whether they're the elderly or the students, can't afford the cost of the housing that's currently here. There's no rent control, is illegal, so we can't do that. You can't really subsidize housing in rents. It's really too many people want to live here, so the prices go up. Whether you want to live in the neighborhood that you want to live downtown and can't afford it, we all can't live in the neighborhoods we want to live in. So it's really, can you live somewhere in the city? Can most people pick an area in the city within a certain radius and afford to live here? whether that's an issue of segregation, I don't really think it's segregation, it's more income inequality. So it's not really that certain, I'm blanking on the word, but it's really an issue of affordability for all, not just for certain nationalities.
Mr. Eden, same question to you.
So I agree that the issue of affordability affects everyone, but certainly it affects low-income people more, and it certainly does have an impact on just how white our city is. I mean, the Water Hill area of our town used to be primarily African-American residents, and it's mostly hipsters and young white families. And we can't deny the fact that the dramatic increase in the value of our homes are driving out segments of the population to nearby, communities. Ypsilanti has become our area for affordable housing for people who work just regular jobs, and to a great extent, we're becoming a less diverse community as a result of this. There is not an easy answer to affordability. It impacts all age groups and all races, but it really does have a dramatic impact on our ability to claim to be a diverse community.
And we will start with you first for the next question, Mr. Eaton. Other than property taxes or an income tax, what ways would you suggest to fund city services?
As anyone who pays taxes in Ann Arbor knows, we pay a lot of taxes. And so rather than looking for increased revenues, I would really like to have a more rigorous method of establishing our priorities and learning to live within the revenues that we do collect. This isn't always easy, but often it's a matter of just simply not hiring a consultant, or learning to do something more cheaply or more effectively. But for us to talk about trying to collect more revenues from our residents, who I believe are really quite heavily taxed already, isn't the right answer for our problems.
Ms. Gianola?
I think the major issue is to not throw away revenue that is coming into the city. We have some one-off revenue, like the library lot we could sell for $10 million. It has $2 million in future tax revenue. If the mental health millage, safety millage passes in the fall, we'll have more revenue coming in there. That revenue can be used for these long-standing projects that have never finished, like the crosswalks. We could sign, light, and paint all those crosswalks. We could put up the street lights that we need that have been backlogged for years. There's all these things that need to be done, but we never have the money for it. Yet every time we get an influx of revenue, we always turn it away. And so instead of thinking taxes or raising taxes or cutting services or something like that, first thing we should do is not turn away the revenue that is coming into the city, because we're always fighting about that. So I would definitely use the library lot revenue if that sale goes through, or the mental health millage, the safety money that comes back in the city to do other safety things in the city, crosswalks, the fencing around the top of the parking structures, all those things everyone says we never have money to do. We don't need to raise the taxes. We just need to stop being fiscally irresponsible and throwing away revenue.
Okay, the next question starts with you, Ms. Gianola. Are there zoning changes you'd recommend to either spur or constrain development in your ward?
Well, the zoning changes that have been done over the years have been through years of public process. And I know there are some people in town that are unhappy with that, but it's years of process have gone into this. And just because some people don't have the loudest voices doesn't mean that their voices didn't count. So we have a lot of plans, a lot of master plans. We just, in the last 10 years, redid most of the zoning. So there's not like a single parcel that I would point out that needs rezoning, because we've redone most of the planning already. I think there are a lot of people throw everything at the wall to try to get a project stopped, not understanding how the zoning process works. If people really want to get involved with planning, zoning for the city, you have to get involved with the master planning. Like with the Allen Creek Greenway Trail. When you do the master plan, that's when you get involved. You don't wait until someone's talking about funding. So I think that's the mistake most people make, and they get upset over single parcels when they need to look at the big picture.
Mr. Eaton, same question.
So yes, I believe it's time for us to review the changes that we made in our area height and placement amendments to our zoning. Those are the changes that allowed the Packard Square development to go forward. Previously, that parcel of land, just as an example, would have allowed basically a grocery store and some two-story condos on the back of the lot. After the area height and placement changes, we were faced with the prospect of having a four-story massive building in the center of a residential block. Our zoning seems to favor density over common sense and doesn't really take into consideration the impact that those changes have on the neighboring neighborhoods and existing homes. And so I think it's time for us to review those, see the bad experiences we've had, and try to respond to the complaints that residents have reasonably raised about the kinds of developments that we've seen. It's not that residents are complaining about this project or that project, but rather they're actually voicing a complaint about the manner in which those changes affect their neighborhoods.
Okay. And our last question will go to you first, Mr. Eaton. What's your opinion about the city's efforts to build a new train station?
My first and primary concern about the efforts to build a new train station is the just enormous cost. It currently is estimated to be at about $81 million. And even if the rosiest scenario is followed and the federal government funds 80% of that, which is very unlikely, that would still obligate us to come up with $16 million in local dollars. We're talking about being able to afford just the basic necessities in town, and yet we're going forward on something that it's going to cost us $16 million. The current train station was designed with the capacity to be easily expanded. We don't need an entirely new train station. We could actually just expand the station we have. And we could have, if we had taken the opportunity, worked with DTE as a collaborator on coming up with more parking and their broader view of development on the other side of the railroad tracks. Instead, we're on this adventure that's wildly unaffordable.
Ms. Gianola, same question to you.
I am a strong supporter of the train station at the Fuller Park site. The reason is because the whole debate over the train station is really about commuter rail. Everybody conflates the issue about where it should be and whether it's parkland or not, but it's really, do we believe in commuter rail? Commuter rail will only be successful at the hospital site. We need to have where the most commuters come in to be the drop-off point. If you put it on Depot Street, then it'll be far from downtown Ann Arbor and from the medical center, and most commuters who are used to going in their cars, they haven't lived out east and commuted to work, they will not be taking the train. It will just be too expensive. If we believe in commuter rail and we want to help climate change, it'll be the most impactful thing we do is to back commuter rail. If we really believe in it, we will put the train station in the location that'll make it the most successful. All these other issues about whether it's parkland and stuff, it's really about that. Whether it's a new Amtrak station, it doesn't really matter where it goes. But if commuter rail is in sight for what people think is going to happen in the future, we really need to concentrate on that site because it will not be successful at the Depot site. You cannot get people to commute by bus right now if it's too far, 2 blocks out of their way. We need the train station to be where it's convenient so people will use it.
Okay, and now we're ready for closing statements. You have up to 2 minutes. Mr. Eaton, you're first.
Again, I want to thank the League for hosting this forum, and I want to thank Diane Gianola for participating in this event. I believe that a council member is fundamentally a policymaker. It's a council member's job to set priorities and establish the policies to be followed by staff. We are not here to micromanage. I believe that being a council member requires a person to be a good representative and to show leadership. I've demonstrated my ability to listen to and represent the views of Ward 4 constituents. I've worked closely with neighborhoods to address their concerns. I also believe that a council member must show leadership. On council, I spoke up when staff refused to disclose communications between the city and the Federal Rail Administration. I offered a resolution to release redacted communication so that residents could be informed about what their government was doing on their behalf. I also sponsored a resolution to place the issue of the sale of the library lot on the ballot when petitions to do this fell short of the required signatures due primarily to technicalities. Leadership requires a person to speak up in defense of our core values. I work to demonstrate our core values. For example, I helped draft and co-sponsored an ordinance prohibiting city employees from collecting immigrant status information. I have a positive view of our town's future that includes protecting what's good and unique about our community. We must promote restoration over demolition. We should value fiscal responsibility over indebtedness. We must work to protect our environment. I have always emphasized common sense priorities. The city can provide excellent services and maintain our infrastructure without raising taxes. Please help me continue my work on City Council by casting your vote for me, Jack Eaton, on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Gianola, it's your turn for a closing statement.
Thanks again to the League, Mr. Eaton, and also for the folks at home watching us tonight. For those who don't know, I am a Democrat who is running as an independent in this race. I will have no party affiliation next to my name instead of the D. Please be assured that I am a true Democrat in my values, but am independent in that I don't align with either of the two factions that currently exist on the council. Although I do agree with Mr. Eaton on some issues, he tends to belong to the faction representing the party of no, whereas I tend to be more realistic in regards to the city's future. Over time, there is growth and change. Time moves on, preferences change, and we can accept the change and manage it, or we can stand by and let it roll over us, allowing others to dictate the outcome. I believe we need to invest in our future and not fight it. I am a strong supporter of public transit, commuter rail, and for a large tax-paying building on top of the library lot. I support our vibrant and walkable downtown, along with our eclectic mix of neighborhoods. I believe that measured and controlled growth is necessary to keep our city alive and to help expand our tax base so that we can fund the services we all expect. On council, I would place an emphasis on finishing current initiatives before adding new ones to the city's agenda. There's only so much time and funding to go around, and new initiatives take away time and resources from those that are already being developed. Whether it's finally outfitting all our crosswalks with signage, lighting, and markings, or finally developing the library lot after 10 years of public process, we need to finish these projects before funding and starting new projects or initiatives. Please see my website, gianolaforcouncil.com, for more of my viewpoints on the issues. The website is very comprehensive and goes into a lot of detail. Also, please look under the information tab on my website to find some position papers on the proposed library lot development and the train station that you can download. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. If you'd like a fresh, pragmatic voice on council, then please vote for me on November 7th. I would be honored to have your support. Thank you and good night.
That concludes this forum. Thank you so much for your participation.
Okay. Once again, thank you to the candidates for participating in tonight's forum, excuse me, to those who contributed questions, and finally to our partners, CTN, for making this program possible. These forums will be rebroadcast on Channel 19 a number of times between now and the election. They are also available on demand for streaming on your computer or your smartphone. Go to our website, lwvannarbor.org, and look for the link to the programs. Please urge your friends and fellow residents to watch these forums as well. For additional nonpartisan and dispassionate information on candidates and ballot issues, go to vote411.org, the League's voter resource guide covering local, state, and federal candidates and current proposals that will appear on your ballot. Make your plan now and be sure to vote on Tuesday, November 7th. Good night.